On this episode of Watch Stuff with Us, even more Mr. Ballen.
MrBallen.
Thanks for tuning in to another episode of Watch Stuff with Us. I'm JD.
I'm Katie.
And we are doing even more Mr. Ballen. Hit that like button. Hit the subscribe button.
Hit all the buttons.
All of the buttons. What's that?
Except the power button.
Didn't
Don't turn
the Pussycat
us off.
Dolls have a song called Buttons?
Loosen up my buttons, babe.
Okay, yeah. Pushing all my buttons, baby. Like and subscribe it, baby. Ooh, that was...
Nobody.
You liked that, didn't you?
People are going to take away their buttons. They're going to unlike.
I tried.
It was creative. You gave it your best shot.
I did. I saw that. Anyway, so without further ado, we're going to go ahead and get this started and watch another Mr. Ballen video. And hit the like button and subscribe button if you don't want me to sing ever again.
It was a good try. Just a little rough.
Nothing wrong with being a little rough.
The story is about a 3-year period where people were going missing at an alarming rate, and no one knew why. Eventually, it was discovered, and let me tell you, it is absolute nightmare fuel. But before we get into that story, if you're a fan of life and he was trying to get away, but whatever this thing was, this horrible... Before we get into that story, if you're a fan of these... sat up suddenly in his bed, breathing hard. The room was pitch black.
We just
he was in, but he could feel he was sweating.
I feel like I can't though. I gotta go back. Okay, there we go.
The beast of Zibops.
The beast of Zibops.
Zibops.
Jevodan.
Early on the morning of January 12, 1765, a 12-year-old boy named Jacques Portufis sat up suddenly in his bed, breathing hard. The room was pitch black that he was in, but he could feel he was sweating and his heart was racing, and he tried to shake his head to kind of wipe the nightmare he had just had from his mind, but he just couldn't do it. All he could think about was how in this nightmare, something had been chasing him, and he had been running for his life, and he was trying to get away, but whatever this thing was, this horrible beast that was following him, it just kept getting closer and closer and closer until it finally got him, and that's what woke him up. Jacques reached up and touched his face, and he realized he was crying.
I have so many dreams like that too.
Right? What is this so special for? Like I wake up sweating from my nightmares all the time.
And like every time you have a nightmare, it seems like not you, but like when a person has a nightmare, it seems like that moment where they grab you is always when you wake up. Like,
yeah, or you fall,
right,
or
I've never had one that like, oh, I fell and like, oh, now I'm in pain. Like, ouch, ouch, ouch. Am I gonna wake up? Oh, I'm not sure.
Pretty
ouch,
sure
ouch.
That means you're dead. They always say if you like hit the ground, then when you're falling,
I think if you hit the
bottom, you're dead.
think if you hit the bottom or the ground, you aren't dead. I think if you hit the bottom and you are still dreaming after you hit the bottom, you're dead. Because that hitting the bottom should wake you up.
This is scary. Let's keep going. I don't want to dream anymore.
He quickly wiped the tears away because he didn't want any of his brothers or sisters to see that he was crying. Jacques was the oldest of 8 kids in his family, and all of them slept in the same small room on straw-filled mattresses inside of their family's little cottage in the southern French province of Gévaudan. And so, Jacques, he's looking around the bedroom to make sure none of his siblings had woken up and seen him in this state, and he was relieved to see that they were all still fast asleep. Everybody made fun of Jacques for being a scaredy cat, for being a coward. And to Jacques, this really hurt his feelings because on some level, he knew it was kind of true. In fact, just a couple of months earlier, he had lost in a physical fight with a much younger boy. And afterwards, Jacques had cried. And the whole town had seen this happen. And so afterward, all the kids began calling Jacques the wet chicken. And even Jacques' brothers and sisters began joining in and calling him the wet chicken and really making him feel totally ashamed. And it wasn't like the adults in...
It's one thing to be called a chicken, but like a wet chicken? Why is he the wet chicken?
I think they said, but you were too busy going.
Oh, maybe he like peed on himself or something. in a straw bed. Now you got to get in a straw for the bed. Like, you know how itchy that is? That's why he was having those nightmares, because he was sleeping in a dang on straw bed.
He's doing the best he can.
Yeah,
It worked for Jesus.
It ain't worked for the people of Jovadan or wherever it is.
Jovadan. Sure. Can you stop it? Good Lord.
God, yeah.
My apologies.
Don't apologize for me.
My apologies.
You guys love this. This is what you tuned in for, this face.
Oh man, I'm gonna take a
The
picture of
village
that
was
later and
stepping
frame
up
it.
and protecting Jacques, because to them, Jacques was kind of like a liability. In this part of France, you know, the winters were brutal. People died all the time in this village from the weather. And then the summers brought all these outbreaks of disease, which wiped out even more people in this village. And so by and large, where Jacques lived, it was kind of like the survival of the fittest. And many kids didn't live that long unless they were really hardy and tough, like their parents who had managed to survive for that long. But Jacques was just not like that. He was very gentle and peaceful, yet somehow he had survived. And Jacques really was not trying to become this kind of macho guy. Instead, he really wanted to be a priest like his uncle. But his uncle lived far away, and so it was tough to see his uncle all that often, to learn about, you know, how to become a priest. But anytime Jacques did get a chance to actually see his uncle, he would have a chance to read all these books and study alongside his uncle. And so for a little while, it was like Jacques was transported away from the hardships of his village to the life that in many ways he wished he had. A quiet, peaceful, very studious life. But deep down, Jacques felt like there was no chance he would ever actually escape this little village where he effectively was an outcast.
Young Strap.
Even though the sun had not risen yet, Jacques just sat on his bed and couldn't fall asleep again after waking up from this nightmare. And so just sitting there in the dark and the quiet, Jacques began to think about what he had to do later that day when the sun did come up. And like usual, Jacques started to feel afraid. And so Jacques eventually just laid down with his eyes open, and he laid there and slept on when one of his younger brothers, named Jean, who was 8 years old, rolled over and pushed him and said, "Hey, wet chicken, it's time to get up."
Hey, wet chicken. Hey, wet chicken. Hey, wet chicken.
I know I'm supposed to be taking this seriously, but my goodness.
Hey, wet chicken.
So far the story. I can't.
We got my man want to be a priest, sleeping on a straw bed.
That's not his fault though. The wet chicken part though.
Yeah.
Bullying is not okay, but calling someone a wet chicken is very creative.
What?
Wet chicken.
And his brother's name was Gene. Was that what? Yeah, Gene. Gene and Jock. Jock Gene.
Jack Jams.
Jack Jams. I was thinking that too.
Jack Jammies. Straw bed.
Oh man.
Wet chicken. Okay, go back before we lose more people. Stop.
Don't you tune away. Look at this face.
I know. I'm gotta say though, those illustrations for this are not the best.
No, that's from his book.
I know everybody's face is like.
I know. Everybody got squiggle lips,
like Morty lips.
Morty lips.
People don't want to watch us. Keep going, honey.
It's our day with the sheep. Let's go. Jacques scowled at his younger brother and shoved him back, but not that hard, because Jacques never really shoved anybody that hard, no matter what they did to him. And then both boys hopped out of their bed, they wolfed down some bread and cheese, and then headed out the door. As soon as they were outside, Jacques noticed that the village was much quieter than it normally was. Yeah. But then again, these days, villagers did not leave their homes unless they absolutely had to. And so Jacques and Jean made their way away from their cottage down the dirt road to the pen.
Jacques and Jean with their cheese.
Jack and Jill went down the
hill. I'm Jacques, I'm Jean. I got some cheese in me. Let me go. Where we going? Now we're going to go have some fun. I'm a Jacques, I'm a Jean. I'm a Jacques, I'm a Jean. I'm a Jacques, I'm a Jean. Hold on. Let me be a priest.
I feel like people are getting our true personalities this
I know.
on this stream show, and they won't be tuning back
Yeah,
in.
normally we kind of like professional, but nah, who cares?
I can't help it.
Where their family kept all of their sheep, and the boys opened up the gate and then used their staffs to kind of corral the sheep out of the gate back onto the road. And as the sheep kind of bleated and baaed and bumped into each
bleating and bawing, blonde and bleating, bleed, blah. Like, come on, man.
Just keep going.
No, I'm stuck. I am stuck. Jacques Jean, bleating and bawing, cheese and crackers,
Wet chicken.
Wet chicken.
Okay. Time to be serious. No laughing contest. Ready, set, go.
each other. The boys worked hard to kind of organize them on the road, and then once the sheep understood which direction they were going, towards the forest, a very familiar walk for the sheep, they kind of fell into line and just began walking very casually.
Why does he look like that? That sheep, that sheep on the right is just staring at me.
Oh God! Oh God!
I mean, if anything's nightmare
God.
fuel, it's these illustrations.
Oh, I got a headache now. Look at him.
Why you look at me
Look
like
at
that?
him. And then the emo one on the back right, with his hair just swoop. He eat his hay like this.
I don't think they eat hay.
Sheep don't eat hay. No, what does she mean?
Grain.
Oh, okay.
I think. If there's any farmers
Cheese
in the
and
house,
crackers.
go ahead and drop a comment.
All our farmer subs. Let us know.
Farmers only, please let me know.
Yes, all our farmer subs. Let us know what's going on. Okay.
I gotta be adults.
Why is he snarled? The one on
I
the right
don't
is just
know. These
like,
illustrations
do your lip thing. Okay. All right. Serious face. Serious contest. 3, 2, 1.
Casually, like they knew exactly where to go. And once the sheep had fallen into this kind of routine rhythm, Jacques and Jean fell in behind them and just walked quietly after them. And as the boys walked, they both constantly kept looking left and right and ahead of the sheep and behind them, constantly scanning for danger, because they knew something was out here. For months now, children all across this province in France, Gévaudan, had been going missing. They'd go off into fields or pastures, like when they're moving their family's livestock around, and the kids would just vanish. And then some...
So they just vanished doing this exact thing that Jacques and Jean are doing, with their bellies full of bread and crackers and cheese.
Maybe they end up on that island like the last guy in the other video.
Full circle.
Mm-hmm.
If you don't know what we're talking about, go back to our previous episode.
Maybe that's where he came from.
Maybe. That would explain it. I feel like, look at MrBallen. I feel like he's disappointed in us right now. Like, you guys are making fun of my story and my illustrations.
He didn't draw them, so it's not his fault. Sir.
Okay, I'm back.
Put some sensors over your face.
Sorry.
If they were found again, they'd be found totally mutilated, far from where they should have been. The attacks on these kids across Gévaudan had begun a year earlier on June 30th, 1764. On that day, a 14-year-old girl, who actually was the older sister of one of Jacques' friends, had disappeared and then been found again later that day, partially eaten in a field near her home after she had not come home with the family's cattle. Now, of course, this was very tragic,
sheep.
but to this point, there had not been...
We saw how they were looking.
They don't eat grain, they eat people.
Yep.
That one sheep in the front, he was definitely an eater.
Yep.
He looked like he's snacked on some humans before.
He had some fingers.
Carrots. Do they eat carrots? Maybe. No.
Yeah.
Attacks, so there was no pattern here, and so the assumption was she must have been attacked by a wolf, which did happen, and often 2 children, because kids at this time in France were often in charge of tending to their families' grazing animals, the way Jacques and Jean were going out with their sheep. You know, these kids were small, they couldn't really defend themselves, and if a wolf set onto them, there was very little
if you know that it's not probably the safest choice, let your child just go out in the field, because they start disappearing.
Right, and getting eaten eaten up,
Mhm.
but you still gonna let Jacques and Jean, Jock Jams, go out there and with their bellies full of bread and cheese and wet chicken, just go out there,
Yep.
handle your business, go move these sheep.
They need to
Like,
go
where
do
they
the
even
chores.
going? Where the sheep going? Where they herding them to? With their staff? Do they have a staff? You know the little sheep
it's a
hook
hook.
thing,
Mhm.
shepherd's hook. That's what it's called, ain't it?
Mm-hmm.
Yep. See, smart. I know things.
Teenagers were also found mutilated and dead in a field. And really, this was only the beginning. As summer turned to fall that year, more and more kids went missing and then turned up dead in fields, partially mutilated. And the more these attacks happened across southern France, the more people thought to themselves, this can't be a wolf. Number one, wolves don't go on extended human killing sprees. That's just not a thing. And number two, if it was a wolf, they would be eating more of their victims. They wouldn't just rip their body to shreds and then leave them. They would eat the meat. And so by this early January day in 1765, as Jacques and Jean were setting out for the day with their family's sheep, the death toll from whatever was killing these kids was now well into the dozens. People in France had begun calling whatever was killing these children the Beast of Gévaudan, and stories
That's what he does. Hide in the corners. He don't kill him. He scares him. I just go,
Peekaboo. Oh, it's terrible. Again, these illustrations.
Well, that's a buck tooth too. Jeez. His eyes a little low too. Dang.
That tail.
Yeah. Is he giant? Is he a giant? Because like the people are little.
I think so.
Is that a dinosaur in the back?
My, what big hands he has.
That look like a dinosaur right there.
I thought he was a ferret, but he got a really long tail.
About this creature began popping up in newspapers all over France. People all across southern France began forming these huge hunting parties to go out into the forests and the wilds of Gévaudan to find this creature and kill it, but they would always come back empty-handed. And then every now and again, a hunter would be out.
He's still got his... Oh, MrBallen. He's morphing into the guy. Wait.
They would always come back empty-handed. And then every now and
okay. Still got the same face though.
Yeah.
And he don't look that big. He just looks like a dog.
He looks like Mac,
right?
A dog. Like,
he looks like a dog. Just they got a full-on musket pointed at his face. Dang.
Lady
blow his brains out. Gonna make you go kablooey.
that they had found and killed the Beast of Gévaudan, but the attacks on these kids all across this province.
Jesus, save him,
Charlie,
Jean, Jacques getting his head bit off.
Pasquale,
Jacques Jams,
little Mary,
Jacques Jams. Look at his. This thing has him by the head, by the skull. Like he could have picked like an easier part to carry him from. And then look at this, like, does she look like is she really trying? She got one arm and an ear.
I think she realizes that no matter how she tries, he's a goner.
Yeah, she got an ear though. Like she was really gonna pull this beast off of this child.
She was just late
ear.
because she only came out of her house when she heard him screaming. And by that point...
Yep. It was too late.
Neglectful parents.
Yep, just gotta give it up. She said better him than me.
Yep.
Province just continued, so obviously that wolf was not it. And so as these attacks continued, all the fairs and festivals that normally would pop up all year long all across southern France, those all stopped because people were afraid to go out in fear of this creature. And then of course in villages like Jacques' village, people really stopped going out unless they had to, again because of the Beast of Gévaudan. But Jacques and Jean,
the Beast of Gévaudan.
This just makes me want to
relied on their livestock, and they needed their sheep to go out and graze. And so, on this day in January, Jacques and Jean had to go out because their sheep had to graze. Their family relied.
The sheep had to go out and graze. Okay, so now we got the answer. Sheep got to eat. werewolf or whatever. I gotta eat too, so he's gonna. Which one is he gonna kill? Chicken, wet chicken, chicken little,
No.
chicken breast.
No. No.
Is Jock gonna survive?
Chicken Thigh is going to survive.
Chicken thigh. Okay.
On the sheep, livestock was their livelihood, and so this was a
Oh. See, that's not an illustration. He's a cute sheep. I like sheep.
Sheep.
Bleh.
Do all sheep have ears like go to the side like that?
Yes.
That's what they do. Okay.
Yes. Do
Just
yours?
wondering. No, mine are fine. I'm not a sheep though.
Pretty sure yours are on the side.
They are on the side, but they aren't like angled up for whatever reason. I've never seen a sheep with ears angled up, but somehow this one looked weird to me.
We just saw him at the pumpkin patch.
And we just lost 2 viewers because I'm talking about sheep. So
Gosh darn it, keep going.
story thing.
That's an AI sheep. That wasn't a real sheep.
If you're enjoying today's story, well, I have exciting news for you.
If
My
you're enjoying this
long-awaited
story,
very
well-
first book is out right now. It's called MrBallen Presents Strange, Dark, and Mysterious, The Graphic Stories, and it's shipping worldwide right now. .com or anywhere else books are sold to get your copy today.
BallenStudios.com.
www.com.
As Jacques and Jean continued walking behind their herd of sheep down this dirt road towards the forest, the 2 boys eventually came to a stop and just turned around and looked back at their village, and they saw walking on the road towards them were 5 more kids, along with 2 additional herds of sheep that these 5 kids were in charge of. Ever since the Beast of Gévaudan had become a thing, Jacques and Jean had begun tending their sheep along with these 5 kids and their sheep. They figured the bigger their group was, the safer they were from this creature. As the 5 kids got closer to Jacques and Jean, Jacques realized that one of the kids that was with them this day was a tall, thin redhead. It was the same younger boy who had recently beaten Jacques up in front of the village, and he had cried and everyone had made fun of him. And so Jacques sees this kid coming, and immediately he can feel his face burning with embarrassment. And then the boy, he sees Jacques, and he immediately smirks and begins flapping his arms like chicken wings. But once these 5 kids and their sheep joined Jacques and Jean and their sheep, they all kind of just went quiet because none of them wanted to be out there. They were all scared of the Beast of Gévaudan, and the only reason together was, again, to be safe from this creature that was killing kids left and right. And so, in relative silence, all of the kids and their sheep just slowly walked together down this dirt path, and eventually they made it into the big forest where
They made it.
They got to the forest.
Oh. Made it.
What do you think they said?
Mated.
Oh, no, good lord, no.
Made it.
No, made it.
where just beyond the forest was the pasture where these sheep would graze. And as
Go
the
to the
group
corner.
actually entered into the trees and it became dark
Finish
and
this
more
myself.
quiet and kind of eerie, Jean actually tugged on Jacques' shoulder and said, "Will you please tell a story?" Because Jean was scared too. The kids were all scared, and they figured, if Jacques just told a story, it would take their mind off of how tense this moment was.
You
And
wanna
when
hear
Jacques
about
heard
my
this
nightmares?
request, he actually
That was
smiled
a good
because
place
this
for
was
it.
something he loved to do. He was a great storyteller. It was like his one strength. When Jean had asked for the story, the kids and the sheep had actually made it to really the end of the forest path. And so by the time Jacques was about to start his story, all the sheep had made their way out of the forest onto this big open pasture right in the middle of the forest. And so as the sheep just kind of filtered out into this open area, Jacques stopped and all the kids kind of came up right behind him. And Jacques started his story by pointing across the pasture to this bog that was right at the base of this big hill. And he said, "Do you see those big rocks in that bog over there? Well, you see the biggest rock? Well, that's not really a rock. It's actually a doorway. And if you move the rock underneath it, there's a portal to another world." And so as Jacques began telling this very creative story about this kingdom that existed underneath the bog, he sat down against a rock, kind of facing out towards the sheep, and all the other kids kind of filed in around him, taking seats, with Jean, his brother, sitting right behind him to his right. And Jacques, he was just really into the story to the point where he kind of forgot about what was happening with the sheep, and he wasn't scanning around for danger, and neither were any of the kids, including the redhead who had beaten Jacques up. He wanted to act like he wasn't into his story, but in reality, he totally was, and he was just as interested in what was going on with the magical kingdom below below this rock. And finally, when Jacques got to the end of his story, where this evil giant that had been tormenting the kingdom under the bog had been tricked by an orphan to try to go through this magical portal into the...
Okay, does MrBallen really know all these details? Like, because I feel like he just be making stuff up. Like he was sitting directly to his right. Like, how you know where he was sitting at? How you know where Jacques was at? How you know where Jean
They
was
probably
sitting?
also kept a diary.
Maybe that's cheating though, because if they had a diary and couldn't afford food, I guess you just write about
paper.
it. Eat the paper. You got
Fiber.
a ton of sheep too. But yeah, you starving and sleeping on hay.
Into their world, and the giant had gotten stuck in the doorway because he was so big, and he never tormented the kingdom again, and they lived happily ever after. When Jacques got to that point in the story and all the kids are totally locked in and not paying attention to anything else, two things happened in rapid succession. The first was, even though Jacques is telling the story and focusing on that, in the back of his mind, he registers hearing the sound of twigs breaking somewhere right behind him, almost like the sound of someone or something moving along the forest floor. And the second thing that happened was the red-headed kid who had beaten up Jacques
is now headless.
He gone.
He's sitting there, but he has no head. And there's a weird wolf sitting in the background. With
The
a head
wolf
in
is
his mouth.
in his seat now.
Right. And the wolf is listening to the story.
My, what big...
And then the wolf said...
What a big nose you have, redhead kid.
And then the wolf said, why do they call you wet chicken?
And then the wolf said, I like chicken.
I like chicken. I'll eat your face too.
Saying a word, just stood up and began sprinting towards the pasture. And for a moment, Jacques thought this kid, who was kind of like a bully, was doing this on purpose, to be rude to Jacques, to kind of run away at the climax of the story like he didn't care about it. But then Jacques realized that he smelled something terrible behind him. But when Jacques turned around to see what was making this smell, he saw that his brother, Jean, who had been sitting right behind him to his right, was now gone, and where he had been sitting was just his staff laying on the ground. And for a second, Jacques just couldn't process what his eyes were seeing. He didn't understand how his brother could have gotten away from him without him noticing. But before Jacques could do anything, all the kids around him that were still there began screaming and pointing up towards this hill that was right behind them. And so Jacques turned around, and to his horror, he saw there was this huge 12-foot tall creature that was covered in fur.
No, that looks better. Before they were doing like the hand-drawn stuff from the book, but this is obviously like AI hand-drawn stuff.
It just looks like a gorilla mixed with a bat.
Bat, wolf, gorilla, man thing.
Him ripped though.
Ripped.
Swole.
I lift, in
lift
between
children
in between
ship.
eating children's legs and arms, I like to go lift. You think the werewolf dates?
Part
Is there a she
24-hour fitness?
In 1794, they had 24-hour fitness for werewolves only.
.com.
Yes, .com.
Yikes.
Creature that was covered in fur. It looked like an oversized wolf, but it was standing on two legs, and its bones seemed like they were too big for its own skin, and it made it seem very angular and jagged. And as it kind of loped grotesquely up the hillside, Jacques realized it was carrying in its front arm Jean, who was screaming and kicking but could not get away from this creature. Jacques understood that this was the beast of Gévaudan, and it was going to go kill his brother. And immediately Jacques is thinking, you gotta run away, get to safety, get out of here. And all the kids around him, that's what they did. They took off running towards the pasture. They didn't care about Jean. They only cared about themselves. And so Jacques, he knows he needs to get away, save himself, but his legs just will not move. He is rooted to the spot because something inside of him told him he has to save his brother. It doesn't matter if everyone thinks he's a coward. That's his brother. He needs to do something. And so Jacques, he turns to the kids who are running away from him, and he screams at them to stop, come back. And the kids were so surprised to hear this strong, authoritative voice coming out of the wet chicken that they did stop and turned around to see what he wanted. And he said, get over here. I have
Hey guys. I don't know if you've noticed, but Gene over there, he got tooken, and he's there's a werewolf.
No, you gotta do the puberty voice.
There's a werewolf, and the werewolf has him like a football, and if we don't go take our staffs and for these sheep, we won't be able to save them. And they call them wet chicken, but that was just a name for me, and I didn't mean any harm by it. And yeah, we just need to go save this guy, and I'm not gonna do it alone. So you can come with me, or you don't. You could run, but
That's good.
I'm
baby.
over here. That's good one. That was a good one.
That was pretty good.
That was a good one.
It was decent.
Yeah, what do you think?
6 stars.
6. It's usually 4 or 5. I got a 6 star.
Yeah.
Okay, I feel special. Thanks.
Plan. And so the
Okay.
kids, with the exception of the redhead who had run off by himself, they came back to Jacques, and Jacques began telling them his plan to save Jean. And the kids, again, were so taken with how Jacques was really owning this moment and being a leader that they all said, okay, let's do this.
Okay, guys. So here's my plan. Redhead ran over there. So
We're gonna
I
let
need-
we're gonna let the wolf get him first.
we're gonna go. We're gonna say
No,
Wolfie,
second.
Wolfie. Red is over there. Go get him first. And then
Lil Red,
and
Lil
then,
Red
then,
Wolf.
then he's gonna drop Gene, and then after he drops Gene, then we're gonna go pick up Gene, and then we're gonna run ourselves. He kind of, I don't know why his cadence kind of sounds like a mix between like a
Right, on 5, guys. 1, 2,
1, 2, 5.
5. Yeah.
Yeah, let's go.
As opposed
Team.
to this. No fist pump.
Team.
Just yeah.
It's like a mix between Barack Obama and Beavis from Beavis and Butthead right now. I don't know why.
Hit play, baby. Hit play.
Yeah.
Shut your face. Shut your face off.
Yeah.
Hit play.
Okay.
I'll hit play.
So after this very quick planning meeting, all the kids turned and
Planning
began
meeting.
running up the hillside towards the beast of Gévaudan, with Jacques in the front with his staff out. And the kids gained on...
Ooh.
Yo.
Hey. Sometimes you just gotta let the staff out. And when that staff is out, that werewolf's gonna run.
I mean,
He
trying to
left.
be a man, so
Yep. Staff out.
let's go.
Staff
Staff's out, guys.
out. I'm a staff out. Okay.
Hmm.
Man.
Mm-hmm.
I heard her running head first into a problem, but
beast really quickly, and the creature clearly noticed and kept turning around and kept looking at these kids getting closer and closer, but the beast did not seem interested in any of them. It just wanted Jean, and in fact it moved, but the beast did not seem interested in any of them. It just wanted Jean, and in fact it moved Jean from its arm up into its mouth, and then the creature began kind of using the trees to pull itself fast.
where's that staff? What? Okay,
That's how Edward did it.
This this werewolf, like, is it a monkey now? Like, is
No, he's just got all the
he
powers.
swinging from the trees? Or he's just running through the trees?
He's going right through them.
I guess so. But Gene needs to get his staff out and whip him with it. Sometimes you just gotta whip him with it. Flog him with the staff.
Honey, push play.
Faster and faster away from the kids.
I
But
lost my
Jacques,
video.
he just kept going faster and
Look
faster
at your
and
staff.
pushing himself to get closer and closer. And as he did, it motivated the other kids to follow along and push it and gain on this creature. And finally, they got close enough to this beast that Jacques yelled out to the kids, "Now!" And they all fanned out around it and began smashing this beast with their staffs they used to shepherd their...
So they all had their staff out.
Honey, keep going.
They had their staff out, and they said, "We gonna
I'm
flog them with
Now,
this staff."
none of their blows...
Don't
to
know.
this creature
No, we're not here to play. We need to talk about this staff beating,
Honey,
because sometimes you got to use your staff for a beating.
we're never going to get through this video.
were doing any real damage.
Sometimes when the staff is right, you
Shush.
gotta You gotta
Look, our viewer
whip
came
it
back.
out.
We
Yeah, they
can't- we
came.
can't-
Okay. Hey, thanks
So-
for coming back. I'm gonna go through with the rest of the video. I'm gonna let you I'm gonna let you finish. In the words of Kanye, I'm gonna let you finish.
We
But
don't need to discuss him.
oh, we lost the viewer again. He left.
That's because you won't shut up.
damage, and the creature did not really seem phased that the kids were now attacking it, but they were kind of able, with their strikes to this creature, to direct it and get it to kind of turn in the direction that Jacques had told them to make the creature go. And so the kids continued to beat and poke and corral this creature, and every time they hit it, the beast would kind of flail out with one of its arms, but it never really did anything because, again, it's really focused, obviously, on taking Jean. But eventually, Jacques' plan worked. He had corralled the creature to the top of the hillside, right over where that bog was, where those rocks in the middle were part of the story that Jacques had told about how there was this portal to another world. And once this creature was positioned where Jacques wanted it, he again yelled to the kids to do the next phase of their plan. And all the kids kind of fanned out to the top of the hill, and with their staffs, they beat and poked this creature down the hill into the bog. And as they did this, Jacques kept looking to see if Jean was alive, because earlier he had been screaming and kicking, but now there was blood all over his brother, and he was limp in the creature's mouth, and he wasn't making any sound. But Jacques didn't care. He wanted to get his brother back dead or alive. And so finally, Jacques stepped forward from the group and wound up, and he smashed the beast as hard as he could, hard enough that the beast actually kind of stumbled forward into the actual marshy bog. And what Jacques knew about this bog and why he had come up with that particular story about there being a gateway to another world is weeks earlier, he had actually accidentally stepped into this bog and saw it was really deep. And he had been lucky enough that he had grabbed a rock and kind of pulled himself out, because if he hadn't, the bog kind of functioned like quicksand. You could get stuck in the bog and never get out again. And this
I've been stuck in the bog with my staff before, and when you get stuck in don't hit play yet.
When I came down,
when you get stuck in the bog, ain't no way to get out.
my apologies, truly.
kind of functioned like quicksand. You could get stuck in the bog and never get out again. And this is what happened to the beast of Gévaudan. It went feet first into the one spot of the bog that Jacques had all the kids corral it to, that was the deepest and most dangerous part. And as soon as the beast stepped into it, it sunk down to its waist. And immediately the beast reached out with its huge muscular arms and tried to pull itself out of the bog, but it couldn't. It was stuck. And so in its panic, it let go of Jean from its mouth, and it actually turned around and it looked at Jacques and the other kids. And when it did, Jacques almost lost his nerve, because when he saw this thing face to face up close, he saw this was not a wolf's face. This was almost like a human face. Its eyes were making distinct eye contact with Jacques, and it was furious. It was like the beast understood that Jacques had just trapped it. He had tricked the beast into walking into this bog, and it wanted to kill Jacques. And for a moment, Jacques was totally entranced by this creature's eyes. It just struck him that this looks human. It looks intelligent. What is this thing? And while Jacques was kind of in this daze, the creature reached forward and slashed his stomach wide open, and Jacques fell backwards on the ground, but luckily he was far enough away from the beast that he couldn't be pulled back in. And in this kind of frantic moment, one of the other kids saw an opportunity and ran forward, grabbed Jean, who was laying on the surface of the bog, and he pulled him away from the beast. And the beast whipped around. He tried to grab Jean, but he couldn't. And so all of a sudden, all these kids were safely away from the beast of Gévaudan, who was totally trapped. And so at this point, the other kids who were not hurt, they scooped up Jacques and they scooped up Jean, and they began running away from the bog, across the pasture, back towards the village, leaving the beast where it was. And as they ran, they heard it bellowing out and roaring and trying to pull itself out, but it still just remained in the bog. And finally, as they got back to that dirt path that led back to the village, they saw there was a group of armed villagers running towards them, because it would turn out the redhead who had ran off, he had told the village, and they were coming out to help the kids. And
help! The beast of Gévaudan is down there.
They got wet chicken.
They got wet chicken.
Wet chicken's over there with his staff out.
He carrying them like a football. Everybody got the staffs out, and they beating the chicken. Or the where? No.
armed villagers met with the kids. They told them where the beast was, stuck in that bog, and the villagers took off to go kill the beast. And then the kids, along with Jacques and Jean, they went into the village. They were put into a home and put on beds, by which point the village doctor had come over and began treating both of them. Jean was alive, but just barely. He had lost a lot of blood, and the beast had grabbed onto his scalp and really crushed his skull, but he would ultimately survive. As for Jacques, it was a very painful wound that he had sustained on his stomach, but none of his internal organs had been damaged, and so he would also survive as well. As for the armed villagers, even though they very quickly got out to that bog where the beast was, when they got there, the beast was gone. And the beast of Gévaudan would continue to kill people for another 2 years until June 19th.
Hold on.
Thought I just said he was
got
gone.
the plan. They got the plan for this beast of Gévaudan, and they trapped him, and he mysteriously got away, and he's still out there killing people. If I had survived a meeting with this beast, that beast was gonna have to die the next time I saw it, or how's somebody gonna be stupid enough to let this happen again?
I don't know how he got out. They just said they got him in there.
I know he was in
He's
there.
stuck.
He looked at him, and he was the beast eyes,
Yeah.
and was up to his waist and chest in the bog, into the thick of it, and
Into the thick of it.
and he somehow got out of that. They turned their back, and the mob was coming, and he turned it back, and he just disappeared.
Well, at least those 5 children from the village were saved, because next week there are more.
Yeah, I guess so. Seattle Ryan, I see your comment. I'll talk about it in a second.
In 1767, when a hunter happened to encounter it in the middle of a forest, and he shot and killed it. And by that point, over 100 people had been murdered by this creature. The hunter would drag the carcass of the beast back into his village, and a doctor would perform an autopsy, but the doctor was unable to identify what kind of animal it was. It did kind of look like a wolf,
a werewolf,
but its body was just so misshapen, and its bones were too big, and it clearly walked on 2 legs, not on all 4s, and so there was never any definitive information about what this even was and how this even happened. But when they opened up its stomach, they did find human body parts. Jacques was one of the only people to have ever survived an encounter with the beast of Gévaudan. And so he was celebrated all across France, and he quickly went from being the wet chicken to the little hero, and his story would reach as far away as Boston, Massachusetts. And in fact, Jacques' story was so well publicized that it eventually reached King Louis XV, and he was so moved by it that he invited Jacques to come meet him, and after meeting Jacques, he loved him and offered to pay for his entire education. And so Jacques would get to finally leave this little village where he never quite fit in, and he would move to northern France and enroll in a prestigious school there, and he would spend his days reading and writing just like he had always hoped for.
All right, so there's another MrBallen video. I really enjoyed that one. I feel like my version of the story and the story that I heard might be different from the story that MrBallen was telling, but I like my story a whole lot better. Whose story do you like? Do you like my version with the staffs and the chickens and them being wet in the bog and all that stuff, or do you like MrBallen's version? Let me know in the comments below. Hit that like button, hit the subscribe button, hit that notification bell so that you're notified each and every time we go live, because who would want to miss out on stuff like this? I'm JD, and she left.
It's me, Katie.
Peace.
Oh boy, oh boy, oh boy.